Hey, Health Fix Junkies. It's Teresa Lear Levine from Becoming More Me, the podcast for busy minded entrepreneurs that want to be more and do less. Blessed to have appeared on not just one, but three episodes of the Health Fix. So I encourage you to check out episode 445, 411, and 322 of the Health Fix podcast, where I talk about breaking up with your old self sabotage, fears, and thriving through life's changes, perimenopause, using EFT tapping and hypnotherapy. You're listening to the Health Fix podcast. Here's your amazing host, Dr. Jannine Krause.
Hey, Health Junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm talking with Anna Rahe, and we're chatting all about fascial tissue in a way that I haven't talked about it before. As a doc who does bodywork and acupuncture, I've come to realize that our wrapping, known as the fascia or fascia, tomato, is so much more than wrapping. And with the rise of gut, thyroid, and autoimmune conditions, and in particular, the autoimmune condition mixed connective tissue disease, I believe that fascial tissue has a role in the health of our glands and organs. Anna and I will dive into autoimmune conditions and in particular the mixed connective tissue disease in the podcast. But before we go there, let me tell you a little bit about her. Anna is the founder and CEO of GST Body. It's a proprietary system known as Gridflow Somatic Technology. GST is a way of remodeling your fascial tissue to hydrate, condition, and revitalize it. She developed this system as a way to restore her health after feeling like she was 80 years old at 18. What the heck? Anna's passion is evident in this podcast, and I learned a ton about fascial tissue that I didn't know. So I'm certain you'll get some new insights from how your tissue loves traction, so that pulling on it, rotation, swinging pendular motions, and you'll even learn a little bit about the interconnection between your vagus nerve and fascial tissue and the idea that there may be a fascial microbiome, just like the microbiome in your gut. What? So cool. So I have no doubt that you will enjoy this podcast and get a new perspective on fascia. So let's introduce you to Anna Rahe. Anna Rahe, welcome to Health Fix Podcast.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Man, we had such a great conversation before. I probably should have hit record, but hey, that's all right, guys. We saved some good stuff for you. Like one of the big concepts that Anna was talking about that I never really thought about before was that this whole fascia thing is not just wrapping. It's a system with its own organs. And so people are going to be thinking like organs? Anna, do tell. Tissue, organs? What is this stuff? What are you talking about? So give us the scoop.
Okay, so I think the best way to think about fascia, people kind of have a general idea, but it's kind of like a body fabric, like a kind of textile. It's woven, it's like fibrous, it's called the fibrous net. And so when you refer to fascia, you're referring to the type of tissue. But this fabric organizes an entire body system. It's called the connective tissue system. And it comes with its own organs, like your digestive system has a series of organs that process everything, and your endocrine system has all these glands and organs that process things. So the connective tissue system does very specific things, and its organs wrap around every other body system in and out, facilitating different things, different functions on every level of your physiology. So I like to look at fascia, and I use those terms interchangeably, right? Because everyone's talking about fascia because it's easier to say than the CTS or the connective tissue system. But I like talking about it in this like kind of globalized view because it has way more significance to our total body health than just thinking of it wrapping your muscles or wrapping it. It's so interesting. The mind kind of still wants to compartmentalize. And these organs, a way to think about them is that they're not massed organs like your liver, your heart, your lungs. Those are mass organs, and those are really interesting in anatomy. You open up the cadaver and it's like, oh, look, what is this? What does it do? And fascia has kind of been disregarded over centuries because it seemed superfluous. It was like everywhere, like cobwebs inside of you, gooey gel cobwebs that are everywhere. And they're like, oh, this is just stuffing. But they were missing, there's an organization to fascia. It's just not massed, it's layered. And so you almost want to picture like a bucket of white paint and you put a drop of red in it and you stir it. Fascia would be the string and the fibers of that plane that's kind of like moving through the paint. And so when you look at it in your organs, it dives over certain organs and dives under other organs and wraps around. And so we start to try to look for patterns more in like a kind of sedimentary or like a layered way rather than looking for chunky items. And fascia, in fact, works best when it's not chunky, when it's not massed, when it's not fibrotic. You want it to be extremely agile and individuated, fibers individuated rather than massed up. It's kind of a different system that way. So that's the big picture anatomically of what fascia is versus what the connective tissue system is and how they serve, they kind of work together. But like you have your viscera, which is the connective tissue and fascia of your organs. It's kind of like a textile that's like slippery and slimy, a little bit more like sateen. Its consistency is very much all about being able to glide and push and work with peristalsis, the actions of motility of your organs. And then you have the myofascia, and it's kind of like Gore-Tex. It's like rough and aggressive, and it can handle high load and high friction because you wear it every day when you move in your muscles and in your bones. And then you have the way that fascia layers over your nervous system and into your endocrine system, and they're all slightly different textiles, loose fibers, broad fibers, and that's all based upon energy output of the organ and how that energy has to be modulated to keep the whole symphonics of body energies moving. And that's the connective tissue system is a communication system. If you look at it as a system, it's a body-wide communication system. It's a hydration and irrigation system. It's how all of our cells actually extract and get the water that it needs to give life into our molecules. It is a transportation system. It's how actual nutrients gets through into the deeper layers of cellular function. It's a animation system. It's the primary way your body comes to life. It used to be thought that muscles and bones pull on each other and that's what initiates, but actually it's fascia that contracts to pull the muscle into action. So it's like our foundational animation system. And so when you take all of these kind of components of what it does, its greatest service is that is your energetic smart grid. I don't know if your listeners or if you're familiar with smart grid technology. There's a great definition that I can actually supply. I can't do it by memory, but like the smart grid is this really interesting network of energy regulation, taking high voltage and low voltage and modulating it into this kind of like usable, friendly, collaborative, connective network. And it's self-sustaining and it's self-operating. It's also self-healing. And so fascia and the connective tissue system does that for your physiology and your carbon life form the way that it does it on the planet. And so it becomes a really serious problem when your fascia gets dehydrated, stuck, non-individuated. All of a sudden, your entire body can't send electromagnetic and electrochemical transport, which is what keeps us alive. And so I like to first talk about it from this like global perspective, and then we can dive into like all the questions that people have, like, well, how did I know not that this didn't exist? And what do I do to take care of it? And but I think that it's important that people just know that this is actually super significant to, kind of like the hidden things. We have something in common, you and I, that a lot of the body problems that we started facing were very mysterious. It's like, why? Why do all of a sudden I hit 40 or I was 18? I was like, why am I so sore? I can't fucking move. And I didn't do a workout. Why do I go running one day and I'm like super athletic and I can make pace and I'm doing great. And then 2 days later, the same run feels like I'm a 10-pack-a-day smoker. Like I cannot get up this hill and I feel so bad. Why do I have all these IBS symptoms? Why do I have these like it's like these multiple symptoms. And it was like this mystery, like what? And so fascia is a fun frontier because for the person who has tried a bunch of things and done all these options, fascia is like, wait a second, here's maybe a new worldview. Here's the 360,000 foot perspective of a new thing to consider in that health equation, right? What we can think about and include in our understanding. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, They're not separate specialties. My gastroenterologist told me that it wasn't a, respiratory problem, but I actually know that that's really connected, right? So the connective tissue system will have multiple symptoms, and it's a good place to go into the mystery of if people have health mysteries, and wanting to fix something that just won't go. Fascia is a really great place to dive into.
I agree. I agree. It's definitely one of the places that I've gone to with myself and with patients when we're trying to figure things out. Now, one of the things I didn't mention before when we were talking earlier is that I've been seeing a lot more mixed connective tissue disease. So the autoimmune connection
Yes,
here, like autoimmune stuff popping off left and right, and folks having like a chronic gut issue or a chronic, this or that issue. And I'm going, I can't help but think that that's not a fascia.
related.
Yeah.
It is. It is. Fascia is deeply ingrained. In fact, I was talking to one of the researchers the other day, in Germany, and we were talking about this fact of like they're starting to define a fascial microbiome,
Whoa.
which is deeply connected. It's the extrinsic versus the intrinsic microbiome that's inside the gut. And the relationship between these shared, stasis of what is happening in these zones, and that one of the things that they have in common is that static. Okay, I have to kind of back up for just a minute. The way fascia functions is kind of like a sponge. It's kind of like a pump, a hydraulic pump that actually needs to compress and release. Think about almost like the Great Barrier Reef and the coral, right? How there's these sea anemones that push and pull fluid through. And so fascia and your peristalsis of your organ, or you're more like pumps than you are like sticks and bones, right? A new body perspective. So we're like this big living pump that needs to be moving. And these microbiomes require this phalangeal kind of motion that is 100% facilitated by fascia. And so when our fascia stops being animate, we have a huge like septic condition for disease. And that's like inflammation I wouldn't want to say retard, reduce the amount of phalangeal kind of like activation and animation in fascia, but so is dehydration. And there's kind of like this interesting reverse relationship between inflammation, where inflammation will cause damage to the fascia, but fascia unhealth will leave the body septic to higher levels of inflammation because it's not spreading and sharing and hydrating and moving these elements inside those microbiomes. So it's a very interesting, like kind of internal ecology, right? Of body ecology.
Wow. I never
Yeah.
thought about that. And I'm sure a lot of people are like, whoa, microbiome there too? My goodness.
That's right. There are all
But
these like little like systems that keep us, in check. That's an interesting thing about fascia too, is that fascia like offers the boundary lines between really important systems that are supposed to be separated, right? So for example, we have the brain blood barrier or something, right? Isn't that what it's called? The brain something barrier.
very
Nothing's
close.
supposed to get to your brain. Nothing's supposed to get to your brain because it's supposed to be isolated because it's got really specific things it's supposed to do. And so fascia, when you look at it in the human body, it's almost like a netting that offers like compartmentalized orientation. So this is where some of this research comes into tying it into cancer and metastasis of cancer, is that certain cells are supposed to stay regional to certain areas in the body rather than migrating into other areas. And unhealthy fascia, when it's not like a netting and there's adherences and like fibrotic conditions, create almost like a skate pond where a rogue cell can come over and actually skate and move in the pre-lymphatic fluids to a new area in your body. And so you want that fascia to be like, okay, these are the protecting of these regions and these, have you ever studied, this is actually something I wanted to ask you, segmental anatomy?
Oh,
Okay.
no.
I found this book, and it's very much part of acupuncture is where I've seen it connected to, but it's a way of looking at the body segmentally by like embryonic development or something. And I don't want to go too deep for your,
Oh, okay. I see where you're going. Okay.
it's just really interesting. And they don't really talk about fascia in the book, But I am like, I feel like if someone was looking at segmental boundary lines, they would start to see the peripheral containers of the fascial organs and start
Mhm.
to see how energy is being passed. And there would be a metabolic process inside of that, of how fascia is feeding things. Anyway, so I wanted to geek out with you just for a minute, but I thought maybe as the acupuncturist and integrationist, that was a required reading that you might
Mm,
have.
No, probably something based off of embryology and then how that weaves into things we call low channels. Like Luo
Oh, okay.
is what that would be. Have you heard of Luo channels?
No, but I want
Okay.
you to tell me about it, because one of the things that I keep looking for when I'm like doing my acupuncture treatments is I don't experience fascia in lines as much as I feel them oftentimes in planes.
Hmm.
And and my acupuncture is the only one who's been able to kind of voice this to me. And I wanted to know if you, what, I guess there's neurological plane or meridians that actually like dive into different neurological planes or something.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that so that I have a better vision of what that is?
Yeah, so what happens? They call them either muscular, so there's muscular kind of connections to the channels, and then there's also things called luos, and then there's
Okay.
also like other different source points and G clef points, which are for the folks who are listening before you guys are like, what in the world is she talking about? These are little points in our body that connect in as like alternative meridians that dive into, yes, muscles or dive off of, so divergent channels is what they're also called. They'll diverge off of a traditional acupuncture channel and dive into an organ. And
Okay.
so I think this is similar to what you're describing, because when we looked at the like higher level picture of it, we were talking about how embryology and how our mesoderm, so this is our muscle tissue, guys, and like the nerve tissues, which I'm not going to remember all the names now, tie into like the ear too, and
Interesting.
auricular. So I think that's what you're describing in the different
Primate.
divergent channels.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I have not read the entire book. It's a like a anatomy book, but I just kind of like, I don't know all of the terms. And so I get a general sense, but it was really, I'm always still looking for, so most of my stuff with fascia came off of personal experience. Like
Mhm.
literally, I would spend hours internally channeling and like being like, okay, it got stuck here. And then this blew up and then I got this sensation. And I literally did it kind of like, I call it body braille, where you just go inside and you follow sensation. And so when I ended up getting an anatomy book on fascia, fascial anatomy trains,
Mhm. Yeah.
I looked at it and I'm like, yes, yes, okay, yep, yep. And 90% of what I experienced was there, but there was I would say 70% of what I experienced was like on that I could see. And then I'm like, but they're not covering this. And
Yeah.
I think that it's almost like, did you ever see, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna, my cultural, I was raised in the 80s like you were, but my
Yeah.
cultural references, there is a video game
Hmm.
that was made into a movie. But the reason I'm bringing this up is that the visual of what I picture fascia to do is like where they're riding these like things and on one plane that's all grid, and then it drops down and then it goes to another grid and then it comes up, and they're in this geodesic kind of atmosphere, but then they're diving in and out. And this is what I'm picturing in terms of the spaces in between. It's almost like interstitium is
Yeah.
another organ of fascia that's layered and being able to drive. Anyway, I don't want to geek out too much because I know that that's not as helpful to listeners who are like, you're in a different zone, dude. Can you come back to where I am? But I think why this is important is that there's this massive organization that is connecting everything, and it's asking us to review the things we've currently thought about anatomy and how and even the sciences that we're
Mhm.
applying to it to take care of our human body, right?
Mhm.
Example that I have is that we use solid mechanics as the primary physics to look at biomechanics. Okay. So when we look at the human body, we see pulleys and levers and, all of these solid types of, it's called solid mechanics. And fascia is 70% water. And that water happens to be this like gel type water. It's a new state of water that they're starting to research. And this new state of water is highly conductive, and it has sometimes they call it easy water or structured water.
Mhm.
And this water has specific behavioral things that it does. And so all of a sudden, when you start looking at movement and how the body is, you're more like a water balloon flying through space than you are, okay, this solid pulley system. The reason this is problematic is that all of our physical conditioning that we do, we've kind of dipped into damaging, okay? And we can talk
Mhm.
about the two things that really damage fascia. But our biomechanics, the way we move, the principles of like trying to build a solid core. We look at the body and we see lack of stability as a liability. And it's like, wait, the gospel of stability has always been like tighten things and tone them and make them more rigid. And it's like, fascia's like, no, I need to have like all of this incredible pulsation and motion that's going through me in order to do my job. And so we look at the two things that damage fascia: sitting all day and over working out, or the way that we carry our mechanical loads, right? So if you're a big worker outer and you're always like, why am I so tight? And why do I feel like no matter how much I stretch after a workout, I can't, like, why we were just talking about this are the chronic, illnesses in the musculoskeletal system that show up: frozen shoulder,
Yeah.
right? Like limited hip rotation, displaced, dislocated discs in our spine. It's because everything gets so viced down. Everything is so into this solid body model rather than fluid body model. So fascia kind of like flicks on the light and is like, hello, world is not flat. World is round. World is not sticks and levers. It's pulleys and not sticks and pulleys. It's pumps and valves and all these three-dimensional, things. So then what you need to take care of your body drastically changes, right?
Hey, health junkies, if your feet aren't happy and healthy, the rest of you could suffer from low back pain all the way up to neck pain. And yes, even gut issues can be related to your feet because your feet are connected to your nervous system. Happy feet equal one less thing the nervous system has to worry about. I want to tell you about Peluva. This is a new zero-drop minimalist shoe with a distinctive 5-toe design. Peluvas give you the most authentic barefoot style experience, but with sufficient cushioning to use in everyday movement, fitness, and athletic activities. Peluvas are super stylish, so you also get a barefoot shoe that looks good too. Peluvas are a step ahead of every other zero-drop wide box shoe because they feature separate slots for each of your 5 toes. So if you've been using toe separators, you can ditch them and just wear the Peluvas. Those individual slots for each toe allow for correct dynamic movement of the foot through the walking or running stride, which is important when toes are encased in a single box, even a wide box. Now, minimalist shoes have faced controversy in recent years about causing injuries from inappropriate use. So you want to get walking in Peluvas, living in Peluvas, and doing whatever you can while you're going barefoot in your home in safe areas as much as possible. So go ahead and use your specialized running shoes, basketball shoes, work boots, high heels when you need to, but wear Peluvas as much as possible to reawaken the natural functionality of the human foot to stand, walk, run, and perform. Try a pair of Peluvas with no risk, and you'll quickly realize that these are the most comfortable shoes you've ever worn. They're designed to feel like you're walking barefoot on clouds. So visit Peluva, Peluva.com and take 15% off with the code HEALTHFIX. Let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a whole different thought process, right? Compared to our usual crank on things, stretch until you can't stretch anymore, thinking about it that different direction. So of course, I'm curious if how you've described the different pumps and whatnot, as well as describing the different grids, is that what created the Gridflow Somatic Technology, GST
That's a
system?
really good question.
Is that
It
where
is
it came from?
So yeah, no, yes, that's where it eventually went to. It was originally called Grace Somatomorphic Technique. It started because at 18, I was part of 3 legal battles in the Pilates world, and I met with a lawyer, and I'm like, I think I'm doing something different with GST. He's like, make sure you name it something that no one else is going to use. Well, no one else remembers it. I chose something so creative that it didn't really work. So it wasn't until probably 2010 when I was like, this is really describing it's grid flow, your smart grid, and the need to keep it in flow. And it's
Gotcha.
technology because There's this interesting element of fascia that people, even in manual therapy disciplines and stuff, are not tapping into. So I experienced this early on in my journey that fascia has the ability to contract. It has cells that are contractile, just like in a muscle. They're not as powerful. So if like the muscle contraction cell that makes it like contract to move you is 10 decibels of power, a fascial contraction is like a decimal and a half to 2 decimals. So it's very subtle. There's a very good reason for this. Science is still like, we don't know what the importance of this is. And I said, well, let me tell you something. Fascia works on the backside of your physiology. If the fascia in your eye pumped like the fascia in your muscle, like the muscle contraction, it'd be like having a jalopy with like a 10-pound base in the back. Your body would just be like constantly overstimulated with contraction, okay? That is not what is happening in our bodies. It's really lo-fi, right? Fascia is very lo-fi. But here's what's interesting. When you contract fascia in patterns, kind of like muscle groups, there's fascial groupings by their layers and by their regions. And when you contract them and organize them together, they're quite powerful. And they actually are what synchronize all physiological and gross motor and anatomical movements. And so this is why I'm really passionate about it, is because you can, by controlling your fascial contraction, you actually have more autonomic access than previously thought, because fascia is deeply wired into your autonomic nervous system. And so you can choose to create impulse, kind of like when you put an electro, pad on your arm and your muscle contracts, but you do it inside you. It's an inside job. And all of a sudden, fascia that's, stuck, rolling it is good because it gives hydration, but it doesn't actually send a impulse for the fibers to spread and distribute. And this is where we start getting to the technology of what is in GST is, if I teach you those patterns and how to contract your fascia and those things, you can have really specific control over many of your physiological functions that you didn't think. It's not just a matter of the state of your tissues, it's how is it animating the function of your tissues, right? Not the condition of it. One precedes the other, but they're separate issues.
Never thought about that before. And we've kind of for baseline, treatments, yes, you think about the foam roller, right? Or you think about, you had mentioned before, the blaster. So let's talk about a little bit about like how you're incorporating something a little bit more. The blaster, well, that's another conversation. But like the different balls, like the melt theory kind of stuff, the foam roller, you're hydrating, you're moving things. But how are you taking it to the next level? Tell us what you're up to.
Good question. So two things people need to know is that fascia is chock-a-block full with more sensors than any other tissue in the human body, which means that it can receive a ton more information, but it also means that it needs all kinds of different stimulation in order to really be activated. So when you look at the way that we are approaching fascia, all of them are doing fascia. It's kind of like the analogy of the elephant in like that for religion. Everyone's touching a different part. It's like, oh, the Buddhists say it feels like a tail, and the Chinese, the Confucius say it looks like your tusks. And so everybody's kind of touching it. And that's kind of what's happening in fascia, because it's really new. And everybody's like, oh, but it feels like this to me, or it works like this. So you have compression, and it feeds a certain receptor, a mechanoreceptor, and it creates an impulse, the same kind of impulse. You're stimulating it from the outside, and it releases. It gives you certain benefits like hydration, like individuation, okay? But it doesn't actually change remodeling structures, okay? The remodeling is what I was really interested in. My body was so messed up, and it was so structurally fucked up. I had rolfing, tens and tens, but I would get in there and they would do the work on me, and then I would go out and dance, and everything that I got in my 10 session was gone within 2 weeks, because this comes down to the approach is that movement supplies all of the requirements of fascia to remodel, to be healthy, to be hydrated, to have glide, but it also offers you much more opportunity. You need duration and you need repetition to create change in fascia. And this is where it feels good to go have a massage. I don't think that taking it away from body workers is the goal, but the idea is that a body worker you see once a week, or if that, once every 2 weeks, they see you for an hour. There's no way that they can counteract the damage that you're doing. Well, what are you doing the most of? You're doing the most of your daily living, which is motion. And so it just so happens that fascia is like, motion is what I do. Motion is actually a metabolic process of eliminating static tension from the system. It is the same thing as a detoxifying experience. We don't create it that way because we always focus on the loading in, because load makes you strong. Load makes you connected. Load is what stabilizes you. And fascia is like, stop loading me with shit. It's like eating too many calories or taking too much sun on your skin. Fascia says, start expelling the static energy that is in the system that's like seizing me. If I get an impulse of too much load in my shoulder, the muscle like gets lactic acid, it shuts down, it contracts, and it can't release. So then we go to the massage therapist, the fascial myofascial specialist, we go on our roller, we get it to kind of ease out. But what happens if we didn't get that problem in the first place? What if we didn't load it incorrectly? What if we didn't move it incorrectly? And so then this comes down to this idea of you becoming your practitioner. Do you know that every person working on your body, and this is happening even if you're rolling on the foam roller, is using only 3 tools: a lever, which is like a stick, to apply force, to get flow. Chiropractors put all of your bones, levers, into a configuration. They put force through it to get a pop through the joint. They're focusing on the skeletal system primarily, nervous system secondarily. Massage therapists use their levers of arms and they push into your tissue trying to get flow. An acupuncturist uses the lever of a tiny needle into the meridian to get the chi to flow. Okay, everybody's using these 3 tools. Well, cool. Your anatomy has all of those. You have a system of 5 different levers, spine plus 4 limbs. They can divide it into segments, and you can direct and learn how to apply your force with really great specificity and precision. And then you learn how to contract your fascia, which is the primary organ of flow that sets the precedent of all flow. So what we do in movement is we start to teach people a different biomechanics. Here, good example, we always teach shoulder girdle stabilization by pulling your lats down and pulling your shoulders back, down and back. Well, my favorite saying is, just because a lat moves like that doesn't mean it should be used like that. The lat is actually supposed to load in and push energy out when you start looking at it from a fascial perspective. It's supposed to take the load and then eject it out as far as it can. You need more traction in your shoulders than you need depression. But our solid mechanics says, ooh, we need to stabilize that shoulder girdle. That is why you're having frozen shoulder. And it's like, no, you're having frozen shoulder because you're pulling your ribs down to your core and you're merging your clavicle down rather than creating suspension and lift and levity in the body. We're like adding to the liabilities of gravity. And so when you look at your body care through the fascia lens, you have to use motion. It is the most potent. It supplies all of the loading, the directional force, but it's also providing duration and repetition. And so it's the primary conditioner of your fascia. So if you're going to want to heal your fascia, what you do during your day cannot be repaired by it can be helped, but not repaired by how 30 minutes of rolling, right? And so then you go into, how do you know how damaged your fascia is? And there's different levels, right? There's genetic, there's disease related on the spectrum. And then there's like, I'm kind of pretty highly functional, but I get tight if I do too many squats, right? And inside of that spectrum, some people need way more like potent and concentrated care of their fascia. And other people, foam rolling is perfect. They just need a little elixir, they need a little lotion, and they're good to go. But that depends on body type, tissue type, and then body liabilities. Like, people who are super active like you would have a greater liability because probably your biomechanics are not great. Even if you're doing them the way that let's say that there's 2 fields. There's like, you're taught this, right? When you go to a trainer or a physical therapist, they all teach this. Solid core, keeping your shoulders down and back. These are really foundational. I call them junk moves, but they're like, like junk food. They're bad for your body. think about what happens in your lymph system, just as a side note. When you pull your shoulders down and back, you are compressing the lymph, but they're never given room to actually flow. To move your lymph, it's not just about activation, it's about circulation. The activation comes from compression, circulation comes from tractioning. And most people don't do enough tractioning in their movement, like pendular movement, to move lymph. So you go to your massage therapist and she pumps on you and then she kind of moves it, but it never gets to this full range of like hydraulic motion. And so these are the kind of things that we need to just start rearranging our thoughts about. If there's an area you can't get to, go to your practitioner, but take some ownership and be like, if I just do these kind of things, I can really actually have healthy fascia, which in turn will change my digestion, my internal microbiome. I will ease my conditions of Crohn's disease and, diverticulitis afflictions. And right, there's all of these, they're not even secondary. They're really primary ways that fascia will eliminate stresses on the body.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I know so many people who it's come like their IBS or their like supposed SIBO, which is they've taken every supplement under the sun and they're not getting better. And we start working on rib cage and we start working on pelvic floor and rib cage pumping. And then we start working on opening up things. And yes, this traction thing you're describing, is that why I like to hang on my bar overhead
Yes,
and just like let myself hang out?
it feels so good.
Yeah.
Crave traction and we never get it, right? So what I've tried to like really take science and make it simple because most people don't have the bandwidth. I like to go deep, but most people don't. And so when you look at how fascia is organized, fascia itself is organized in tubes, okay? From the cellular fibril of the fascia to the actual structure of how it wraps around on a micro level into the macro level of a sheath around the myofascial envelope or a stocking. I like to call it a stocking. Not an envelope. Envelope is square, muscles are round, whatever. I don't like using the same terminology. But when you look at that, you're like, okay, fascia needs something very specific. And it's a syringe-like motion. And I've simplified it down to this. If you picture fascia like a tube and you know that it follows the laws of fluid dynamics, not solid mechanics, fluid dynamics, different physics, right? Different branch. You have to picture a syringe because it's the most simple, it's the most simple example of fluid dynamic hydraulics. I pull the syringe, water comes into it. I push the syringe, water goes out of it. And then there's one extra action for fascia, which is rotation. Okay, these are the three foundational principles that fascia needs constantly in motion. And every anatomical movement we have in the human body is one of those three things. We call it flexion, extension, and rotation of the spine. But if you look at it from a three-dimensional tube, it's actually like an accordion, compression, traction, and then torsion. Okay, those are the three forces that are moving fascia. So when you start looking at human movement, you need to be like a sponge or like a syringe where you compress, you then traction, and then you rotate it out. And the way that I like to picture it for people is it's kind of like washing the fibers of a beautiful sweater. You dunk it in the water and agitate it. That's the compression. You bring it up and all of the water and the dirt falls off of it, and then you rotate it out to get the final detoxification. And so when you look at like primal squatting, is the most foundational movement that is healthy for every single organ in your body, and it's compression. It's loosening fascia. It's not tightening it, right? Picture, those Chinese finger toys from the 80s where you put your fingers in each end? So that is literally how fascia is. It's like woven and it's a tube, and you stick your fingers in, and if you push them together, it loosens and you get all of this space. And then you pull it and it gets tighter. This is how fascia actually allows us to gain strength and stability without rigidity, is that it pulls long and it kind of holds you like a sling. And then you rotate and it does it. So if you look at, I don't know if you're familiar with this, rotation in the body happens on the bilateral rotation of the pelvis, which turns the spine, which turns the shoulders. And that's the rotation that's on micro movement that's like literally stirring the tissue. So you're walking, that's compression. We rarely get traction. We need more traction, but that happens through breath. And then that's the pedestrian version. And then we rotate as we walk. And those three elemental actions should just be taken as a the baseline for what we look at is in exercises. And if we look at exercises, we are super malnourished. Nothing that we're doing in our exercise movement, that's the only movement we get, nothing in our exercises is dynamic enough to make us have all of these elements that fascia needs. And think about fascia like fabric. It needs to pull, it needs to dunk, it needs to, right? And then all of a sudden your fluids are moving and you're not a septic river mess of disease. Poetic. So those are the three things that fascia needs in a simple science to taking care of your body. And that's how the basis of our technology works, is using those fluid dynamic principles to apply to movement. So you can manipulate your tissue. So movement becomes tissue manipulation for the purpose of remodeling for any level of health that you need.
Makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. I'm thinking like exercise just in general. It's usually forward and backward motions. It's usually flexion, extension, rotation. Every so often we get something, but it's not all at the same time. And most people are not breathing,
That's right.
you know, in
At
terms
all.
of the whole pumping thing. So I'm like, okay. So I saw online that you had your
Yes.
tools, right? And there's lots of traction. And I saw you kind of in what looked like a Pilates kind of V of
Yeah,
sorts.
like a Vitruvian shape. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So give us a little scoop, like how you bring it all together, if you will, so folks can kind of have a visual of like, okay, we're tractioning, we're pumping, we're moving, we're turning, yeah.
I'll try to describe it to you. So I think I like to describe it two ways. Number one, fascia really likes, like, life is a jungle gym, right? Diversity of motion, wide ranges of motion, and it really loves microdosing. It does not want you to go out for 60 minutes at the end of your day of sitting and trying to pump it full of goodness, because it's already got glycation. It's already got sticky honey restriction on its fibers from sitting all day. And then you go out and you burn it and scorch it with high intensity workouts. And it's like, you just went out to the Mojave Desert without sunscreen on and sat out and got, in the beginning of spring, right? Your skin's like, oh my God, this is not good. It's a similar experience for your fascia of just being like burned. So it likes microdosing. Every 45 to 60 minutes, you should be able to look around and find poles, find handicap ramps, find railings, find park benches, find your door while you're at a gas station with the window down, and start tractioning. You grab onto the surface and you just hang back. Whether you're doing it from a pull-up bar, or whether you're doing it from, do you put video with your podcasts?
Yes.
Okay, let me just describe it and then I can just show it. You literally take first thing in the morning, and then you'll apply this movement to your jungle gym. Everywhere you go through your day, you're going to look for places to hang and play. Your body loves to play, okay? So you go first thing in the morning, put your toes against the baseboard at your sink, grab onto the sink and stretch your butt back with bent knees as long and as far as you can. You're going to rip that sink off the wall, and then you're going to drop your butt into a compression. And then you're going to pull back your butt again like a slingshot, and then you're going to drop your butt into compression. This is the most elemental. It's easy to do off of filing cabinets. It's easy to do off of sinks when you're walking out of a bathroom, when you wash your hands. It's easy to do when you're waiting in line at a Starbucks and you're, leaning your butt against the railing at the outside of the ramp, whatever. You're looking around and you have to reorient your brain to be childlike. And here's what's interesting. Fascia has a reflex, just like your hunger reflex, just like your sex reflex, just like your thirst reflex, and it feeds to the same area of your brain. If you're not feeling the urge to go and traction, your reflex is dead. It's gone. And so the first step is to just do it on purpose. It's almost like you have to get a little bit of like a habit going, because then pretty soon you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I've got to go. I've got a traction. Something in me has to pull. And your fascia is being like, discharge the energy. It's getting too static in here. Discharge the energy. And that's why kids are always constantly moving, because they have a higher output of energy. Anyway, so what it looks like in your day is microdosing every 45 to 60 minutes. You should have that reflex. You're looking for ways and places to hang. Most of our stuff is very sedimentary. So traction is what I kind of prescribe first, is just get the yawn in your body. Just get the yawn. And then start to do some rotation. Like when you're standing there, perfect. We see this all the time in like Chinese videos of like the people in the park that are like swinging their
Yeah.
arms around and trying to move their chi. The practical Western explanation for that is you have to rotate to be able to create exfoliation on your organs. So your organs sit inside your torso, and your torso should be suspended as long as possible. And it needs to actually, like, when you rotate, your organs rub up against the inner surface of your rib cage and your pelvis. And it's literally like this exfoliating. If your torso doesn't move, you're pickling your organs. They're just sitting in these gastric juices in these, kind of like cornered places, and they're taking all of this stuff and it's just sitting there. None of your bile ducts can flow. It's like a serious backup. So rotation is this amazing, like, ability to start wringing out, and actually it's one of the more detoxifying. It's not as decompressive as traction, but they all serve their own purpose, right? You want all of them. And then if people could add a little dessert to their fascia care, let's say compression, traction during their day, if I could give them a dessert, it would be pendular motion force. Grab a bottle of water, grab your bottle of wine that you're taking to a friend's house, and just swing it around in these huge movements. Step on a yoga block and swing your leg with pendular motion. We don't get enough of this, but there's this amazing retraction, and it's just delicious. And I just actually had an interview with another podcast, and this girl's like, my sacrum went out. I was desperate. I was doing all of this like rolling, and I was doing all of this like massage. And I went into my acupuncturist. I went to my chiropractor. It wasn't alleviating. She's like, you posted this thing on swinging your legs. And I was like, I'm just going to try it. I did 10 and they were kind of sore. And I'm like, okay, keep going. Within the second rep of 10, it went away and it didn't come back. And I was like, well, that's good. That sounds like a miracle. I don't know if it'll work that well for everybody, but it's that kind of simple things where it's like your body just is anorexic when it comes to motion, good, vital, like healthy, nutritious motion. And everything we do is junk. It's just junk. It's like eating junk food. And the long-term effects of it are stress on the body, stress on our joints, disease, right? Think about it. We teach everybody to hold their core 100% stable. Do not move your core and just move the parts. Why are our shoulders and our hips the first joints to get replaced? Because it's not anchored deep into the spine that's facilitating all of this joyful, good, yummy, healthy, fluid dynamic motion. It's just richer.
Yeah.
and
I'm
fantastic.
listening I'm listening to you talk, Anna, and I'm going, I need to like play, like watching kids play. They're doing all kinds of motions, right? They're twisting, they're turning, they're,
Up and down and out, and
yeah.
everything that humans do after that are like, think about like Pelotons, and everything's just like this phonetic, like no one is doing that.
Yeah.
Think about how much more metabolic that is. I use the word metabolic because literally metabolism has a 3-step process. Generate tension, animate, or we talk about macerating, we break it down, and then we got to get the unused out. Generate, animate, eliminate. Those are the 3 that are the full cycle on even biochem, right? The cycle of our chemistry, the methylated pathways in the body are all metabolic. And so the largest capital M is movement. And so we can have really small movement, or we can have really big, luscious movement, right? And most of our movements are way too small and way too restricted to offer us any nutritional value to what the body needs. Movement bigger than exercise. You need movement in your hyoid bone. What? In your Adam's apple. To keep your thyroid healthy, you need movement. Well, I pull my ribs down and then I have to lengthen my neck, so I push my chin back. I mean, it's crazy. We're creating chaos and then having to fix it. And it gives you and I a job. But like we were talking about in the beginning, who wants to keep fixing people? I want to go to higher things. I want to like stop fixing the same repeat injury, right? Let's get onto a new place, a new plane.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so
No, you're right. I would love for folks, to work on fixing themselves, and put this portion of my business out of business so that
that's
we can
right.
move on. right?
You
Because
would
I
have
think
more
there's
business somewhere else.
right, right. Well, it's more like, like you're talking about being able to fix yourself when it's, 3 a.m. and you've got back pain, right? No one wants to go to the ER at 3 a.m. because their back hurts and they can't get out of pain. Okay, what can we do? So having these tools are like game changers and they're money savers. And who's gonna pay? I don't know anyone that can go to a massage therapist every day, right?
That's right.
I don't.
Nobody. Nobody. So what if you could just do it for yourself? Like, what if you took an initial, and this is what kills me is I'm like, it's a little bit of an education, but you read your owner's manual for your car. You try to go in and do your best to fix your washer before you call the $300 an hour like appliance man.
Yep.
So we should apply this same principle of like, there's a little bit of a learning curve. But I feel like in 25 years, I've done a pretty good job of like distilling it down to like, it's not like you have to open up an anatomy book and become a medical doctor, but you do have to learn something. You do have to be like, oh, I mean, I'm familiar with the syringe, but I didn't know that was what I was doing. Oh, but now I see the correlation and now I can apply it. Great. Now I can be a pump. Now I can make sure that I'm getting fresh water to my tissues,
Yeah. Yeah.
take the stress out of my organs,
Well,
have better blood flow.
and really be able to be intuitive at it too, because I think there are, like you were saying, there's that reflex where you do want to just stretch, like everything inside you is like just stretch it out, or traditional stretch versus what you were describing is a whole different ball game, guys. just
Talking.
just
I have
completely.
people constantly be like, well, this feels really stretchy. I stretch. And I'm like, and then they take a class and they're like, that's not stretching. And I'm like, that's right. That's not stretching.
It's not the
Feels
same.
similar, but it's not stretching.
Yeah, I don't want people to think that I'm talking about we have that, but we do. I mean, I do have an urge to like, and it's the stretch, but when I say stretch, it's traction.
That's
And
right.
and I think in my practice I spent so much time on traction with folks because that was like glorious. So tell us about your online classes
Yeah.
and your program so that folks can get a little glimpse of like how they can learn these techniques to be able to do this on a daily basis.
Thanks. Yeah, I have we have an online studio. It's called the Vitalife Studio. And it's a monthly kind of subscription and it's regularly added to. I also teach live classes 4 days a week so that people can come and experience that. In fact, we have a Saturday class and your first class is always free. So just come and feel the difference because I really feel like as fascia is the sensory organ, you can't really appreciate, you can get the concepts. My number one thing I hear people say is like, this makes so much sense. But when you feel it, you're like, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back and eat like, those foods that you take hunting or you take up on your hikes that are like dehydrated.
Yeah.
That's how the difference is like eating a beautiful turkey dinner at Thanksgiving versus a dry packet of food. That's literally the difference between GST and most other movement disciplines. It just feels so good. Feels like a deep tissue massage, relaxing but effortful. So that would be a great place to start is to get that free class. And we have an amazing program. It's a 10-week program called the Ageless Body. And it came out of just this passion for me. I kind of tell people that I feel like I'm living life in reverse because at 18, I felt 80. All of my symptoms and all of the pain that I had was so depleting. And it's not a hyperbole. It was literally so hard for me. And so I feel at 46 more like I'm 18 than I've ever felt. And I was like, this is where we're going, right? You and I are the same age, and it's part
Yeah.
of your mission too, which is like, I just want to live long, but I want to live well, right? I just want to like have endless access to the things that bring me joy and feel good. And so that 10-week course is really fun. It's a combination. It's not all online. I mean, it's all online. It's not all recorded. You get to be with me. We do privates. We walk through different things. And so for some people, that's really the right choice to just, do a deep dive into GST because there is this learning curve. It's like you have to, it's not just change your mind, but it's like, let me teach you how to move. I liken movement a lot to learning an instrument or learning a language. It's a language. It's a way of being. And so you have to kind of learn these notes like the 8 spinal actions and the, 4 appendicular movements. And then you put them together and you start to play music. But most people in our day and age think about workouts and they're like, I want to play Chopin. And they play it. It's like, ow, ooh, ah, that's a horrible, that's a horrible movement experience for your body. And so what we try to do is just teach you how to move. And it can be therapeutic or it can be really athletic. We have a whole collection of videos that is our answer. Fascia has different answers to like cardiovascular health. Instead of taxing the cardio side, which actually makes the lungs smaller, you focus on the respiratory side through breath techniques, and that allows your lungs to get the power and regulate heartbeat. And so it's a different relationship to cardiovascular health. So it has different answers to fitness and conditioning than other things. And so there's a lot of options. Fascia can reach many different types of people and what their body conditions are. So those are some of the things you'll find.
Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. And so your website, Instagram, let's tell folks where they can find you so they can get a better sense of all the things and know where to sign up and things of that nature.
Perfect. Okay, we'll go through my name first because it's kind of
Yeah.
weird. Anna Rahe, but you spell it phonetically Rahe, R-A-H-E. It's German, don't ask. Just Rahe. That's just Anna Rahe. You can go to annarahe.com and navigate from there. You can also go to GSTbody.com. And so the Instagram handle is either Anna Rahe of GST or GST Body. And those are the two where you can find me. The Anna Rahe is a little more curated, like personal life stuff about how GST shows up in my parenting, in my cooking, in my, fun things. And GST is really directed towards, offering solutions and to different body ailments and new principles and concepts for body change.
Awesome. I look forward to looking into the parenting and the cooking. That sounds like fun stuff to me too. So guys, I'll have the notes there and ways to get to both of these in drjkrausend.com in our show notes. Anna, thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much information. I learned a ton of stuff today.
Oh my gosh, thanks for spending time with me and giving me the opportunity. I'm really passionate, as you can tell. And so I wanted to be able to share with people ways to improve their life and their health.
That's the mission here. Thank you.
Hey, Health Junkies. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Health Fix podcast. To help support my mission to bring you tips, tricks, and tools to help you optimize your health, I'd be grateful if you'd like, subscribe, and write me a review for the podcast. And if you hear a product you're interested in on the podcast, you can now go over to my website to learn more. That's doctor spelled out JKRAUSEND.com. Just click on shop and you'll find all the information on my favorite products that I stand behind and use myself. All affiliate income earned with your purchases goes directly to help support the production of the podcast so I can keep bringing you quality health information. I appreciate your support and am honored to have you listening to my podcast as a fellow health junkie. Thanks again.